Well, hello everybody. I want to welcome you to this next Petrosys webinar. We're going to be talking about what's new in Petrosys version 17.3. Again, thanks for joining up. Please make a note that this webinar is going to be recorded, so we'll be able to put this up on the website and our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Like I said, I'm pretty excited here getting to show everybody some new features that are going to be in version 17.3, which is due to be released here very shortly. All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to talk. There's a whole bunch of new stuff coming out in 17.3. I'm not going to be able to show you every single thing, so I'm really just going to be going through some of the kind of key features. One of the really big ones is we've drastically improved the way you can get Excel data and just ASCII file data onto the map. So things like well locations, just pretty much any kind of point data you have in a spreadsheet, we can get on the map. And that's not just point data, it's also polygons and lines. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We made a lot of cartographic element improvements, so added new functionality to the scale bars, the north arrows, the legends, the title blocks, that kind of a thing. We've also made some improvements to our surface modeling and added some new features to the surface modeling. I'm going to show you all those new features, or a couple of those new features. And then we have a really cool new PDF export that supports layered PDFs, as well as improving our raster export. So we've made it a little bit easier to find and easier to use, and added some new functionality there as well. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right out of PowerPoint and get into the Petrosys demonstration here. So just starting off with a kind of a nice little base map that I've created in Petrosys. Just has a little bit of satellite imagery, as well as a little bit of culture data. And then you can see on the right-hand side, I've just got, this is just a Windows Explorer. Again, all the functionality I'm showing, it's all on Windows here, but if you're a Linux user, all the same stuff is going to be available to you. And so, like I said, one of the big key new features is the Petrosys Excel data view now, or the ability to add Excel data and ASCII data to the map very easily. And so in this case, it's really common for people to get data from Excel, or in a format that's just from Excel, or you have just column delimited file. In this case, it's well locations as well as some zone top picks. Really common to see users have this kind of data. And so getting this onto the map, it used to be a matter of importing and doing a couple other things. So like I said, we've drastically improved that. Let me just filter out some of this so you can see exactly what's going on. Drastically improved that. So you can see I've got my files over here on the right-hand side. I can now just take that, so that's the file I had open, drag and drop that onto the map, and zoom in just a little bit, you can see all the data points just show up on the map. So it's really as simple as it could possibly be, dragging and dropping the point data. If I modify one of those layers, you can see this is actually just adding Excel and text files as one of our inputs to the GIS, or the spatial data type that we've supported for a really long time. If I go in, so you can kind of see what's happened here, is Petrosys was able to take that Excel file, it recognized the latitude and longitude columns, and so it can add those as points. But I have a bunch of other columns in here that I might want to work with. I can go in and just kind of modify the display however I'd like, just like any other point data. So if I wanted to change these symbols, we can definitely do that. And if I move this guy a little bit out of the way, you can kind of see what's going on in here. So changing the display. Annotations, these support all of the different columns that you may have had in that file. So if I have well name or some other z-values that I want, I can add those to the list of annotations being displayed, and just add those to the map however I'd like. So now if I click apply, you can see my well names are showing up. So supports it just like any other spatial data source. Another new addition to the display GIS is we've improved the thematic mapping. So now if you do have a z-value, and there are really any kind of numeric value in one of the attributes for your spatial data, we've added this option to thematically map using a gradient. So now I can go in here and say, I'm getting ready to grid this data up. I want to kind of take a look at it, see if there's any outliers, see what my gradient's going to look like. So I can grab, say, a sub-C value, scan that attribute to show me what the data range looks like, so I can kind of verify, all right, what is my input data to that gridding operation going to be? That looks good. When I click OK, you can see it's actually gone through and colorized the different input data points. So now there's a gradient. It's showing me where my highs are, where my lows are, and this is just going to be my input data, say, to a gridding operation. But it's a good check, and if I double-click it, I can actually hide the objects that don't have a matching feature there. So you should see those guys kind of disappear, all the black dots disappear. So that's adding point data to the map. This ASCII import, we can also do that with Polygon data. So now, if you've ever been trying to get Polygon data into Petrosys, again, it was a little bit of an import process. Now, if you just have polygons, say, in a Excel file or a text file, I can, again, come over, drag, drop those guys onto the map. Petrosys initially takes all those points and thinks of them as single points, not polygons. So I can just go ahead, modify that, go into the formatting. So click the little formatting button right here in the display GIS, change the shape type from points to polygons. And then all I have to do, you can see it still parses out the different columns. I've got my segment ID column over here, and I can pick that up, and now when I click OK, and let's just make this a little bit thicker of a line so you can see it, and maybe add the segment ID as the name to the map. That works. And now when I click OK, you can see I have my polygon. So that's dragging and dropping. Again, if you don't want to drag and drop, or you want to know exactly where this feature is, it's just under Display GIS. So when you go to Display GIS, now we've added a couple new data sources. You can see there's the Excel, and then there's this text file option. So those both work the same way. Once you have the data on the map, so I've got, some polygons being displayed from my Excel file, I can select these individual polygons and right-click, and if I wanted to turn that into a real Petrosys polygon file or a fault file or a shape file, I can do that really easily using that right-click and export spatial data option. Nice thing about that is I can turn these polygons that are in an Excel file into a Petrosys polygon. Then I can start using that for clipping functions, volumetrics. If I have faults in an ASCII file, I can bring those in and turn those into faults and use those as an input to my gridding operation. And it's just a really easy way to turn Excel files or ASCII files into shape files, export them out to my Petrel project, or put them in KML if I wanted to view them in Google Earth, or something like that. So that happens really, really fast. If I write these out to a shape file, you can see it happens very quickly. So that wrote out those 17 polygons in half a second or whatever that takes. So if I go now, so that's a couple of the big improvements to the mapping interface, or being able to add those Excel and ASCII to the spatial data display. I mentioned some improvements that we've made to the surface modeling. So if I just open up the Petrosys surface modeling window, and I've opened up a task file that already has a saved workflow in here, so we can see that this workflow is basically going through and gridding a seismic survey, as well as doing a little bit of depth conversion and then a well tie at the end. So a pretty common workflow for doing a depth conversion and then tying it to well data. If I modify my grid create grid task, I can show you a couple other new things that you get in version 17.3. One of these big new ones is, I'm gridding, say, a 3D survey from my Kingdom project. You'll notice there's a new AOI defining option here. So before you had to either choose a map sheet or another grid or manually define that AOI. Now we can actually go out and pick up a third-party source's 3D survey. So in this case, I can go grab that, basically the geometry of the 3D survey that I'm getting ready to grid. And when I do that and click the little scan button, it's actually picking up the rotation angle of that survey as well as what my cell size should be. So it's giving me the bin locations. It's really important for gridding 3D surveys. Make sure that the data is honored very accurately by matching up those the survey geometry. So that's really, really handy here. A couple other new things that we've changed, or added, not really changed. If you go into the clipping options, we've always been able to clip a grid to distance. Some people may have noticed in the last couple of versions of Petrosys, we clipped using distance. We clipped to a circular region. You didn't have an option here. It was just clip to distance. So we've added a couple options to this distance clipping. So now you can choose between wanting a to create a little radius around your points to a certain distance. We can go back to what Petrosys was using as a clip option in previous versions, so from about version 16.8 and before that, we used to use a square clipping, so clip to a distance of squares around your data points. And now we've added this clip to a data envelope. This is an option that people have been requesting for a while. What it's doing is basically creating a convex hull around your data points. So if I use this option, I don't have to draw a polygon. So you get used to the workflow of displaying your data on the map and then maybe using the edit draw a single polygon to create a polygon around it, and then whenever you go back you can use that polygon to clip. So you don't have to do that anymore. You can just use this clip data to an envelope. I can apply a buffer distance around that if I wanted to, but I don't necessarily have to. And now if I just run this single operation, it's going through using the AOI from my survey, and if I go back now I can display that grid that I just created, and you can kind of see what happened with the data clip. So I didn't have to go and draw a polygon to create this grid and clip it. It's doing it automatically just using the data. So it's just using that survey from the third-party source to clip the data. So that's a very handy new option. Makes for easy, faster gridding. Another big improvement we've done, or another feature that we've added to the surface modeling, is we've improved the well tie. So after I've gone through, I've gridded up my two-way time data, done some depth conversion using grid arithmetic, and then I want to tie that grid or flex the grid to some well data. I can go in, pick the grid, you know how to use the well tie, or if you've used the well tie in the past, nothing's changed there, but under the reporting tab, we've added an option called a display mistie report. And so you'll see when I do this and run the well tie operation, Petrosys goes through, queries the data, compares the point data that we're trying to tie to that grid, and then calculates a difference. And so you can see here what Petrosys has done is actually gone through, found all my data points. It knows since it's a well input data type, we also get the well name, number, and unique identifier. And then it's showing me what was the grid value at that location before, what is it now, and what was the difference prior, and what's the difference after. The distance after is always going to be pretty small unless you have a pretty bad tie, and maybe you're doing a little smoothing. But this is a really handy tool, so now I can go through and scan very quickly and see, okay, now I just found this spot. Why was my difference at this point? If you can see that, it's about 5,000 compared to around the 1 range here. So there's probably a problem with this well, and now I know what the well name and the UE is. I also know the location, so I can go back to my well data source and figure out why is this the only well that has a negative value. So somebody accidentally added a negative in there, or maybe it's missing a elevation datum, something like that. We can go back and check it. So it's a really good QC tool, and it's a spreadsheet in Petrosys, so it's really easy to right-click in here and do a little export to Excel. And so that's going to take all this data, put it into my Excel program or OpenOffice or whatever you happen to be using, and then I can manipulate the data in my spreadsheet program. Very, very handy stuff. Don't need to save it. All right, so those are some of the changes. There's been a couple other changes in here. There's been improvements made to the gridding algorithm. So if you're gridding faulted surfaces, you should see some not just better performance, but maybe better results. Not that they weren't really good before, but there's always a little room for improvement. So check that out. In version 17.3, gridding around faults has been improved, as well as a couple other performance improvements in here. If I go back to my map, and I mentioned some improvements to the cartographic elements, so things like the north arrow and scale bar. You'll notice now, if I go into Edit Scale Bar, we've added a lot new options for creating your own scale bar. So if I go in and just edit and modify this existing scale bar, which already looks a little different than all the ones that we had available to us before, we have lots of new editing options. So I can go in, you can change the scale bar type. You have a lot of control over how that looks. So how does the line look? What are all my annotations? How many intervals do I want? We could have that before, but you can see there's a lot more customization options in here in terms of annotations, where the annotations are going, and all that, colors, everything. So you can really go ahead and make your scale bars pretty much however you want them to look. Place them in a box so that now they show up with a little box around them. You'll also notice another pretty cool new feature in here in these different cartographic elements. You can see this little plus symbol just to the right of a lot of these text places where you would end up putting text data that you always want to have in here. We can actually start reading different values if you click the plus button. I can automatically add things like what is the file name of the DBM that is being used in this case, or what is the geographic CRS that's being used by the map sheet. If I click OK in here and then close out, I can display this scale bar now through Display Map Elements Scale Bar, and just choose this guy. And now you can see whenever I add that, if I just zoom in on it, you can see it's actually reading the CRS straight from the map sheet. So if I switch my map sheet, that's automatically going to get updated. And that functionality has been added to the toolbar display, also the north arrow. If I go into Display Map Element North Arrow, you can see some improvements in here. We've added more options for the default north arrows that are available to you, as well as added a real easy way of getting north arrows. If you have a CGM file that's a north arrow that you wanted to use, we can just go and use a file browser to pick that up. When you're displaying the north arrow, again, you have the same options here. So, if I wanted to display below my north arrow, what is the name of the CRS that's being used on this map, I can do that. We can also choose which north arrow type we're using, or we want to display. So now you have the option of picking between true north, grid north, or magnetic north. And when I do that and draw the north arrow, you can kind of see you have more options over here. So really handy new things. There's also been improvements to the legend, to the title block. I'm not going to go through every single new option here, but just know that those are all available to you, and very, very handy stuff. All right, so those are the cartographic improvements. Let's say I open up just another presentation map that I created earlier. It has a nice set of groups and lots of different layer types on it. It's really common for people who use Petrosys to come out, make really nice looking maps, lots of different elements, call out boxes, all these different things that you would want to plug into a presentation, or maps that you want to get out and share with your colleagues. Get these out to help prove your point, sell your prospect, whatever you need to do with it. Petrosys has improved the way that you can get these maps out. So we made it really easy for you to save maps. It was easy to save before, but we've made it a little more apparent. If you go to File Export now, you'll see this raster image option. We've improved the interface here so you have more control over the type of, say, geo-referenced raster image you are exporting, or what the compression types you have available to you for creating these raster images. So really easy to get the map out as a raster. And then the really cool new feature is this export to PDF. So if I go back to my file export and choose the PDF option, you'll notice there's a new option in here called adding layers or geo-referencing. What this is going to do is, so if I click OK and save that out, which I'm not going to do because it takes a second, and go back and show you an example. Whenever you export this map to a PDF. It comes out really nice, high-resolution map. I can actually zoom out a little bit on there so you can see most of the map. So it looks really good. Doesn't take anything to open it up. You can send this PDF off to anybody. Just opens right up in the normal PDF reader. But now any PDF reader that supports layered PDFs are going to be able to see the different Petrosys layers that you had in that map. So I can go in and it's recognizing my different grouping. So if I wanted to, I could send this off to a manager or landman or pretty much anybody. They don't need to know how to use Petrosys. Now they can just go through and cycle through different layers that they're interested in. You can have multiple grids on here, so you could cycle through and turn certain grids off and certain grids on. But it's a really handy tool for just sharing the data, sending it out to people who don't necessarily need to know how to use Petrosys just to view these really nice looking maps with the layers in them. So as you can see, those are some of the really big ticket items coming out in version 17.3. Just shoot back over to my PowerPoint presentation. Like I said, the big ticket items were the really easy access to your Excel or ASCII data to get that displayed on the map. That's point data, polygons, lines. Improved the cartographic elements, your north arrows, your legends, your scale bars. Those guys making your maps look a little bit better, are really nice. And then we've also improved well tie reports, 3D survey geometry is available to set your AOI to, improved clipping options, and then getting those maps out of Petrosys. We've made that even easier and given you some better formats and really handy formats like that layered GeoPDF. There's a lot of other options. I'm not going to go through every single one here that are other new features. I just encourage everybody, once you get your hands on version 17.3, which is going to be released in the next couple of weeks, take a look at the release notes. There's a lot of new features that I wasn't able to go over, but you can see a listing of them right here, or some of them right here. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and definitely if you have any questions, feel free to send us some emails at info@petrosys.com.au. Send support questions to support, and then of course you can follow us on our social media sites, the Facebook, Twitter, anything there. We're also going to be at a couple upcoming trade shows, so you'll definitely want to stop by the booth if you want to see a live demo of all these new features. See Petrosys at the SEG in Las Vegas, and then also we're going to be at PetX at the end of November. So you definitely want to come check out the new features at those booths if you happen to be at those trade shows. So again, thanks everybody for listening.